Hello and welcome to episode 60 of the Good Guy podcast. We're attempting a new little rig type thing for this um, episode, just for the intro. It's a Friday podcast. We've got a guest on, the fantastic Eanna Hardwicke, who is an actor from Cork in Ireland. And great. You might have seen him in the recent smash hit TV show Normal People, playing Rob, I think. I hope his name is Rob in the show. I recorded this maybe last week, maybe 2 weeks ago now. Um, and we've had another guest on the Monday there, Tahib, in between. It's a very stressful time, and I'm aware that some people will expect you to only be talking about the maddest stuff in the world right now, but I think what I'm aiming for is just embedding the scary stuff of anti-racism, scary stuff, positive stuff, very positive stuff, into my normal stream of output. So while that is an important part of what I'm doing at the minute, a similarly important part of what I'm doing at the minute is talking to Eanna about creativity and acting and being an artist and discovering things and experiences and shared experiences and just talking to each other. And I thought it was a really, really good interview, and I'm really, really happy with how it went. I'll plug all my stuff. Mondays is the solo podcast. If you're new to the podcast, if you're a fan of Eanna's or a friend of Eanna's, welcome. Hello. This is the Good Guy podcast with me, Vittorio Angelone. I'm a comedian, actor. I write some things, some poems sometimes. Ugh. I'm from Belfast. That's why I talk like this. And I hope you'll hang around. Check out some of the other episodes. If you're a Cork native, another episode I would recommend. I've done 2 episodes with Chris Wally, from Young Offenders, who's a really good friend of Eanna's and mine. So check that out. There's guests have been comedians, actors, all sorts of things. If you're in the acting world, check out the previous episode with Tahib about kind of racism within the acting world and within drama schools more specifically. But Monday podcast I do by myself, kind of solo. They're a bit more kind of introspective, obviously, because it's just me and just kind of thinking about things and working out how I feel. And sometimes I make good points, sometimes I make stupid, silly points, and that's all right. I bring out a new video every Saturday on my Instagram and Twitter and Facebook. Sometimes it's stand up, sometimes it's sketches, little character things. So check that out at Vittorio Angelone. Twitter at that Vittorio. Facebook, if you're 92 years old, at Vittorio Angelone Comedy. Um, Tuesdays and Thursdays I do a podcast with comedians live on YouTube called Doing Bits, which is where comedians work on new ideas and kind of workshop them and chat about stuff. I've just recorded one with Jacob Hawley, which was fantastic. So jump on my YouTube channel, subscribe there. If you're watching, subscribe here. If you're on iTunes, subscribe. Spotify, subscribe. If you're iTunes, chuck us a little 5-star review. I mean, what difference does it make to your life if you just do a little 5-star review now while I'm talking shit at the start of the episode? Honestly, what's that going to change about your day? It'll make my day, and it won't ruin yours. What more could you want? And if you're on YouTube, just click the little thumbs up button. That'd be great. Um, that's Tuesdays and Thursdays. Guests on Fridays. Saturday, new video. Sunday, I do a thing called the Sunday Roast. It's kind of been off a bit a minute just because it hasn't felt like the time. But you're all fantastic. Enjoy this episode with Eanna. I hope you get a lot from it. I think it's fantastic. I'm really, really pleased with how this episode went. Me and Eanna hadn't really spoken. We just ended up stumbling onto each other on Instagram, and I'm really pleased. I think we really connected and spoke about some good stuff. I hope you enjoy this episode with Eanna Hardwicke. So give it up for Eanna.
Awesome.
So I'll have just said, give it up for I always see every single episode of this podcast. I go into the podcast and go, yeah, I meant to ask him how to pronounce his name, didn't I? And then I didn't. I just didn't. Both of your names, I know I could probably get right, but
I'd
don't
love
want
to
to
hear
get
it.
wrong.
Do
Is
you
it
want to
just
try it on it? Oh, well, we're recording
yeah,
this.
a
Yeah, let's
hundred
give it a go.
percent. Just is it just like Anna Hardwicke?
That's really good. It's that's like 90% there. It's Eanna. So
Oh,
like
Anna.
phonetically, Eanna. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh fuck, I was so close. Bastard.
You were really close. Yeah. I mean, the big one is people just going phonetically and going Eanna.
Eanna, yeah.
Which makes sense, like Liana, Eanna, whatever. But yeah, it's Eanna. Not many people get it first off.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in, because in the north we don't get uh what is the word, not enforced, compulsory Irish
Irish.
lessons,
Yeah.
so you can kind of choose to. And then when I went to secondary school, I remember my dad disputes this, but I remember him being like because you could pick two languages and the options were French, Spanish, German, and Irish. And my dad was like, well, don't do Irish, it won't be any use to you. And he says
Right.
that he didn't say that, and I disagree, because looking back and moving over to London particularly and having friends at uni who would, it's just a lovely way to connect with people and
Yeah.
feel part of something bigger that I feel like a little bit out of. And it's just such a hard thing, I think, at this age to commit to learning a new language.
Amongst, especially, yeah, at this age when you're trying to build your career and what you're into and all that, it feels like it's something for 10, 15 years down the line, maybe.
Yeah.
So did you actually have the option to learn it in school, or would it have been outside of school?
In school, we had the option, because I went to a Catholic school. Protestant
Oh,
schools
okay.
wouldn't have done Irish, but Catholic schools have it as an
Right.
option anyway. I think we had like one or two compulsory classes. Like I can count to 10.
Okay.
But
Okay.
what really frustrates me about Irish is, even when I do that, the one thing I know how to do in Irish, Ulster Irish, is so different.
Oh, like a world apart. But they
No,
all are, to be
but
fair.
this is the thing. So I'll say something, and like Southern Irish people will like laugh me out of the room, and I'm like, fuck you guys, like I'm trying.
Leave me with my counting. Give me that at
Honestly,
least.
just let me fucking say some of it. And it's like the way I learned how to say thank you in Irish is Gurmiugat, which is probably, yeah. So
Yeah.
how would you say it?
Guramagat.
See, I mean, it's close, but it's like,
I feel yours is just shorter. It's like to the point.
it's just very like, I tried to write a joke about the difference between Dublin accents and Belfast accents, and it's one of these jokes that is now quarantined inside my head because I have nowhere to put it now. I would love to get up on stage and try it, but I just didn't. It was just in my notebook, and I'll go, oh, I'll get to that. And now comedy doesn't exist anymore. And it
Yeah.
was, people from Dublin never want their teeth to touch. They're just like, all right, how's it go? All right.
Yeah.
And then people in Belfast, their teeth are welded together. They're like, what the fuck are you talking about?
That's great. That's like saved years of dialect lessons, really. That's class. Can you do a Cork accent? Have you given it a go?
Oh boy. Well, a
Well,
little. Well, how are you? A
yeah,
little
yeah,
bit. It's
yeah.
stressful to do an accent to someone who's from the place.
That's good. That's Cork is probably the hardest for. Maybe it's just a north south thing. Like we're as far apart as we can possibly be. It's the hardest one to do. I think it's like a totally different shape to the northern
Yes,
accent.
for
But that's
sure.
good.
It's all right. I feel really kind of consciously aware that, because I was really on a path towards acting for a good amount of time. So I studied music at Guildhall. But I studied as a musician.
Oh, I didn't know that. I knew you went to Guildhall. I didn't know you did the.
So I wasn't
That's like a brilliant place to do music, though, isn't it?
fantastic, one of the best music colleges in the world, basically. And
Yeah.
so I studied as a classical percussionist, and through that discovered theater and actors. Like when I arrived at Guildhall, I didn't know that it was a drama school, which is
Yeah.
just mental.
Well,
Like,
I probably wouldn't have known the music thing until recently enough. But
so I, like in Freshers Week, I would be going up to people like, "Oh, what do you play?" And they're like, "I'm an actor," and I was like, "What are you talking about?" And then and then so through that I discovered, just from going to see my mates in like their second and third year shows, I was just like, oh, this is the theater is. This is pretty cool. And I kept going to theater outside. I kept going to the places like the Globe and seeing all this theater and being like, hey, this is really, I really enjoy this. And at the same time, I was having a couple of things lined up. Number one, I had repetitive strain injury in my arms. So I
Okay.
really couldn't do very much playing of percussion. Like I couldn't practice very much. Like I was just in quite a lot of pain all the time.
Shit.
So I had to take a good chunk of time off playing quite a lot. So I had this time to kind of look into other things like different kinds of performance art where music and acting were kind of meeting and blurring the lines a bit. Like, and then at the end of my degree, like my final recital, the longest piece within it had like no, like there was almost zero instruments in my final recital. I played a table. I played this piece where I had to be topless and like was just beating the shit out of myself. And there was like a little bit of text in the middle of the piece. Like there was just, it wasn't sung, it wasn't musical at all. It was just a piece of text.
That you had written or?
No, it was within this, in this, I think it's Hungarian piece of music.
Okay.
And it was very like character based. And I did like this piece that's essentially a rhythmic monologue and all these things, just partly because I couldn't play traditional instruments at that time. I couldn't hold sticks or anything. And partly because I was spending a lot of time performing as a percussionist and thinking, and people who listen to the podcast have heard me say this so many times, it's a weird position to be in, to look out into the audience and not know why any of them are there. To be like, there's no way I would pay to come see this, so why am I doing this?
Right.
So I decided that if I wanted to be an artist or a performer, I wanted to put things out that I would want to take in. So at the time I was going to see a lot of comedy and a lot of theater. And I loved TV and film the whole way through. And I ended up actually auditioning for the drama course at Guildhall twice. First year didn't get anywhere, I think, because I was still in my final year of the music degree. And then
Yeah.
the second year, I got to the final round and didn't get in and was heartbroken, like wildly upset that I didn't get in.
Yeah.
And it was for the 3-year full kind of drama school course. And looking back, it probably would have been a mistake had I gone. But definitely something that I've lacked since then. Because I think because that was such a hard experience to care so much about something and work towards something for so long and be told no. I think I
Yeah.
have some kind of like internalized like trauma towards acting where I feel quite averse to it, and I haven't done it in such a long time since then, because I think it just churns up a lot of these kind of, oh God, I don't want to feel like that again.
I totally get that.
Which is
That's such an interesting approach to it, though, that I like the fact that you can't. I've not heard anyone. I don't know. That's a first to hear someone who goes like, I would looking into the audience and going, I want to do what I would go to see, and what would like legitimately make make my night, make me laugh, make me think, give me something that I like really think is worth paying for. I try and remember that, try and think about that a lot, kind of at the moment. But that seems to have informed where you like the work you do now as well, though. Like in terms of like podcasts are just like an exploding industry of people. It's just this amazing gift people like give themselves, like that every whether you're walking on your way to work or whatever, that like the things you do, whether it's stand-up or this, they are very popular mediums. And even in acting, you can sometimes feel like you're like, oh fuck, is anyone gonna like this? Like, or am I doing something that is like, that balancing act of going, because I know this means something to you as well, like balancing act of going, like how much of this is like provoking and interesting and also popular and enjoyable, and can I get the two of them?
because I've been asking myself this question recently of whether I want to be a good comedian or a popular comedian.
Yeah.
And there are good comedians who are popular, and there are popular comedians who are not good, and there are good comedians who are not popular. And it's the same in any kind of artistic industry, and it's this real balancing act between at what point do you trust the consumer and the audience, and at what point do you trust yourself.
Okay.
Because it's like I can tell a joke in a comedy club that the premise has been tread 100, 1,000 times, and it will get a good reaction in the room. Like there's comedians that I will have heard and watched that the audience won't have. And realistically, this is an extreme example. I could go on and do that other comedian's jokes, and everyone in the room would have a great time and laugh a lot. But I am just regurgitating someone else's art, and I'm not being an artist at all. So I am
Yeah.
popular, but I am such a bad artist to the point where I'm not even an artist. Do
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's that balance. But then I could go on and do my own stuff, and people might not like it, other than like two people in the room. And it's about what we were talking about briefly beforehand, is you don't want to always be preaching to the choir. You want to be accessible enough to people who might not agree with everything you put forward, so that you can reach them with things that might challenge them slightly, I think.
I even find that in acting, when it's not about subject material, like if you're obviously if you're stand up, you're putting things out there that, as you say, might not land immediately with everybody in a room, but is pushing something and is challenging something, striking a chord with even 2 or 3 people. For me, that's as good as it gets a lot of the time. Even in acting, when it's not your subject material and or it's not you're not writing it, or you're not even talking about anything political, or I feel like there is, maybe I'm only making it up in my head, but there's this thing what I feel people will like, and what I feel is true to a character I'm playing or the story. And there's like, I feel like there's always a version of something I can do that will be seen as more popular or conventional, or the version that I think is like objectively, authentically that character and that story. And I'm always wary of that I'm like, oh, when like I can, feel myself pushing towards the kind of the showy side, where I'm kind of feel like I'm giving people something that they want, or that they've seen for, or that they think is good acting. But then just reminding myself that that's not that as soon as you try and do that, as soon as you try and please people, it's kind of death.
It's no longer, you have to honor the story that you're telling. You have to honor the character that you're playing. And I've seen that for sure. I think there's an interesting perspective you get, where I have this bizarre connection to drama school, where I was so like in it but not in it. Like I have such an understanding of it, but such a lack of understanding of it.
You
but
knew all the people.
I knew all the
You're all in
people.
the same building. It's over by the Barbican, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like in the Barbican. So
it's beautiful. Yeah,
a lot of them were telling me about it a lot. My girlfriend was studied as an actor at Guildhall. She's graduated now, and it's like, so I have this secondhand knowledge of all that stuff, but I also have this kind of unique perspective of also being separate enough to it that I can be on the outside looking in as like an observer of the whole thing. And you do spot these things in a way that maybe not many people appreciate, other than people involved in the process. So there's plays that were on at Guildhall that I saw 3 or 4 times over the course of 2 weeks. Partly because I really liked it, or it was like one of my favorite plays, and I just wanted, or I would often go see it, really enjoy it, and then grab a couple of music students and be like, we're going to this tomorrow night because it's fucking great and you should come see it. And I would always just go with them, because they're not going to go if you just tell them to go. I would always just like bring people to the fucking thing.
Yeah.
But you definitely saw a thing, and I'm sure you've seen it before in various things, where over the course of a run, I saw like an early performance and was like, that was fucking great, especially by that actor. And then the reviews come in. The reviews say that actor's really fucking good in that role. And then in subsequent performances, that actor starts to revel in things slightly too much, and it becomes almost self-indulgent, and like it's showing off, and it's great acting. It's objectively very, very good, but it's that positive although it's positive feedback, and people always talk about the damaging effects of negative feedback, that positive feedback has also damaged their ability to give an
Yeah.
authentic performance.
That's so true. I've definitely done that as well. Like as soon as
Mm.
someone tells you you're good, but in something, or if it's drama school and you feel like it's got a good reaction,
It's
and
Pavlovian, isn't it? It's like you get the treat and you go, okay, I'm gonna do that loads.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And sometimes consciously and sometimes unconsciously.
Yeah.
And it's only it can be. I've had moments where you're on stage doing it and you're going, "Oh, now I know I'm
Yeah.
fucking leaning into this." You know what I mean? And it's funny because we were always told in drama school, like, chase the good feeling, like that. Like the acting has a connected to it where you're in that, I don't know, like that sort of place of flow where you're kind of the right amount of conscious and the right amount of unconscious. And but then there are times when you're, I think probably the wrong amount of unconscious, and you're kind of just like you feel like you're firing on all cylinders, but actually you're just showboating a little bit or something. And I think it's so fascinating the way it happens, because part of me thinks the only way out of that is just to do enough work and just to do enough plays and enough nights at the theater where you go, okay, now I know that balance, that little reset I need to do every time, where I feel good about myself, but I also don't feel like I have this figured out.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of goes back to, like, I don't know, the big thing, like the thing that I thought was the most fascinating was hearing that idea that, like, you kind of want to rehearse and prepare in a way that when you go on stage, everything up to then is kind of figured out, but then the 2.5 hours of the show isn't. It is, but you are actively really figuring out, living through the story differently every night. And like, even when you said that, like, that actor who has been, has gotten loads of praise, and they're on for the end of the run, and it's subjectively really good acting, but they are leaning into it a little bit more. I think that sometimes it can be really good acting, but it's still like that Mark Rylance quote, or it's like, it's yesterday's dinner or something. It might be really nice, but it's not true of that, maybe that night. It's like,
Yeah.
you're doing the best bits from last week.
Yes.
Whereas I think sometimes good acting is like, if every night changes and every night is different, some nights are electric and some maybe not so electric, but at least you've been present and doing
Yeah.
the show with the actors and sharing it that night, as opposed to just going, here's my best bits.
Yeah. And only focusing on, it leads to you only focusing on like your highlighted moments or your kind of feature monologue or whatever. And
Yeah.
there's a balance to be struck, because there's that indulgence in your moments and leaning on stuff. And the beautiful thing about stand-up comedy is when you do that, no one laughs.
Yeah. It gives the game away more in stand-up comedy more than anywhere, doesn't it? Because
Yeah.
it's like, if you're enjoying it too much, it's the least enjoyable thing. Or maybe I'm wrong there. You should be enjoying it, but it's like, if you're
Expecting the laugh, if
there, you go.
if
Yeah.
you it needs to still be unexpected. It needs to be sparky and alive in the moment. Otherwise, it is just it's just like what worked yesterday. And I often find that with when I come up with a new joke idea, the first time I do it, my brain is so alive in the moment of telling that story for the first time, or trying to explain this premise for the first time, and like navigate it and find my way to the setup and the punchline. To like, the first time I do jokes is often goes quite well, but then the second time is often like awful, because I'm just trying to say it in the same rhythm that I said it the first time,
Yeah. But that's
rather
hard.
than,
That's hard. Like,
for sure. And that's like, I still can't connect those two things, because obviously through stand-up comedy, I people would make fun of me for it. Like, I laugh a lot on stage as a stand-up comedian, like a lot. Like, there's a video of me at the Stand Comedy Club in Newcastle where something happens in the crowd and I like respond to it, and I laugh for a minute and a half on stage. I don't say anything.
Where can I get this? It's on
It's
YouTube.
on YouTube. I'll send you it after. And like, so, but also like, I will laugh at my own jokes that I've told hundreds of times on stage, and it's not fake. As much as everyone will be like, but you don't like. I can get to that place in my mind where it feels new and it feels like I'm saying it for the first time, and I still, it's a different part of your brain, but I want to be able to connect the dots so I can do that when I'm acting as well.
Yeah.
Even when I'm playing a character, I can access those lines because it just feels so different. Like when I'm telling a joke, because it comes from my own worked out thought process of I got to the way to say this through my own speech patterns.
Yeah.
I can access that in a different way than I can if something's prescribed to me and I'm not allowed to change a word of it.
Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah. I think I was going to ask you this actually. Is there sometimes if it's a theater script, you hear that thing of like, if you read it enough times, you've absorbed the text to a degree where it's in your muscle memory, and so you can play around with it with confidence that you're kind of not that you really understand it, so you can it, like you can it can have there can be a different action behind what you say and do every night. So I've been like toying with that myself. I'm like, sometimes with a film script, or if I'm doing a self tape or something, it's like, right, do I just kind of look at this enough so that it is actually genuinely fresh and spontaneous when I'm doing it and I am figuring it out? Or do you do that Anthony Hopkins thing where he says his lines and he reads them 100 times,
Yeah.
and then obviously you can't practically do that every time, but through that he develops some kind of like system where he can do what he likes with it. But do you practice jokes aloud, or is it more just you come up with the material and you kind of save it for the night, or do you like regularly even just, I don't know, say them?
So there's a I used to. So when I first started out, I would have everything word for word and try and work out exactly what was going to happen in the joke. But what I found with that is it ended up really not being the way I talk. And for me, coming from doing quite a bit of acting before, I felt like if I wanted to play a character, I would just act.
Yeah.
Whereas stand-up comedy was an outlet for me to be myself on stage.
Yeah.
And I enjoy that vulnerability of being myself. So when I tried to prescribe the words that I was going to say and work it out in advance, um, if it didn't feel like it was me talking, so I had to kind of adjust my writing process and go in with. I think a lot of the time I go up with a premise and a punchline, and I know where I'm trying to get to, and I know the idea that I'm trying to get across, but I don't know how I'm gonna get there. And I often think that's a really nice way to do it, especially because I think that allows you. There's a thing in stand-up comedy and in acting as well. Like it kind of harks back to what you were saying about being yesterday's dinner, where every audience is different, every room is different, the acoustic is different, the people in the room are different, the energy in the room is different. And as much as it sounds very wishy-washy, and for a long time I kind of hated saying things like this, like people have an energy and you can feel people's
Yeah.
energy within a room and what's happening. And I'm sure that it's our subconscious is picking up on things that we can't consciously understand. I'm sure that it's we can actively hear or feel breath in the room and heartbeats and temperature, and from that our subconscious can work out from experience what kind of mood or what kind of energy is in the room, like emotionally. And for me, the best stand-up comedian and the best stand-up comedy is explaining these ideas and jokes in a way that the audience in the people in the room will understand it. You can go in and say, I'm a high energy comedian or I'm a low energy comedian. But sometimes you go into a late night Saturday show and everyone's really fucking drunk. And you either need to take the energy down so that they fucking listen, or you need to take the energy up so you can smack them in the face at the start and then
Yeah.
get your ideas across in a slightly different way, because every audience needs a slightly different approach to what you're doing.
That's an amazing that's an engagement with an audience, I think, that's taken a degree further than it is in like in acting. I don't know what you think like the differences from doing both, but like aware of it as an actor, but you're also, I think, this is a kind of a point of debate among people. I don't know. I think you're trying. I would think like you're trying not to be infiltrated by an audience's energy, whether it's a really raucous crowd who are like, especially if it's a home crowd, like if it's a drama school crowd, and they're like, go on, yeah, that's it, come on, son.
Oh, my funniest story. I will come back, but I was on a show once, and a mate of mine was saying the tour he was on before the tour we were on, there was this guy in the show who was like a proper like working class guy, and kind of like landed in acting like very unexpectedly by his like full family and things, but like he absolutely loved it. And he was in this show, and then the actor's name was Gary, and in the show he had like a fight scene, and they toured it to Gary's hometown, and Gary's mates came, and Gary's name in the show was like Tom or whatever. And then in the fight scene at the back of the room, Gary's mates were like, go on, Gary!
Oh god, so good.
It's like when do him.
They give you shit then when you lose the fight. Like, what the fuck was that? It's like when in the office, when when they come to see him doing his play, all his mates from school or whatever who are not into his, or who he's embarrassed. It was a piss take, an exaggeration of that thing of him, like his mates from school. He doesn't want to kind of mix them up with his acting world and stuff. Yes. And he's kind of embarrassed about this, this job he does or whatever. And they're sitting in the front row, and he's got to do the kissing scene with the other man on stage, and he just won't do it that night. Yeah. But I guess like I'm not thinking about that home crowd versus like a quiet crowd. I've played to literally audiences of a handful of people sometimes. I did a play, a piece of new writing in Cork last year called Misfit Mythology, which was such a brilliant experience. It was written and acted by a wonderful writer called Irene Kelleher, a wonderful actor and writer. And it was a two-hander between the two of us, and we had really good crowds most of the nights. It was a really enjoyable show. It was like it was kind of like a whodunit in some ways, mm-hmm. But it was a really good drama that gave the audience just enough detail to really want to kind of figure out what was going on. So we felt like we really had the audience with us every time, and it was a really enjoyable run. And then there was a storm in the second week, like a proper fucking storm, like stay at home and don't leave. Mm-hmm. And we were kind of like, oh, we might have to cancel the show. We don't want to put anyone at risk. The storm day arrived actually, and it was fine. It was like not a bad storm, and people were kind of going about their business. So we went in anyway, and I think we had like 5 people there, 10 people there. And we kind of talked about it beforehand, because she's a very experienced actor, and I'd done drama school and was out about 1.5 years at this point, and we were going, the challenge now at nights like this is like when you have your opening night and you've got a great response, and you have a night like this, we give them the same show. Mm-hmm. Not that we just do it automatically, but we don't allow us to become low energy because the crowd is quiet. So it's a funny thing in acting, because as you say, it's absolutely live, and it is different every night because it's a different audience. Then I think there's that threshold of going, I don't want to be affected. I need to have a filter to not let in too much of the cheering, and also to not let too much of the kind of the quiet in as well. So whereas with comedy there, I don't know, it seems like you've got a far more direct line where you're looking at these people in the eye going like, okay, I need to constantly rust in this.
And they're allowed to talk. Like they're not, but like they're not in the rules set out by the host of the evening. They're not allowed to talk, but in the structures that exist in the cultural phenomenon that is stand-up comedy, they fully are allowed to talk. Like no one talks about heckling in theater. It just doesn't happen.
it doesn't have. We'll get back. Ask a quick. Have you ever? I've never been in a theater and heard anyone heckle, and I always think to do it would be like I don't know. It feels like putting a car into reverse while you're driving it or something. It feels like you'd be doing the most cataclysmic thing in the world if you were in like the old Vic and you just went like, "Nah, I don't believe you." Like, what would happen? Like, I'd be so scared.
There's a couple moments that spring into my head, and the first one that sprung into my head, I haven't thought about in so long, was my older brother's primary school pantomime.
Yeah.
And the guy who was playing like the comic, the like Joker or whatever it's called in the pantomime world, he had this joke, and whatever it was, the punchline was chips. And obviously one of the kids in the audience had seen it before. So he did the setup and went like, "What do you get if you da 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 da?" And this kid in the audience just goes, "Chips." And the 11-year-old actor on stage went, "That's what I was going to say." And then just cracked on with the show.
That's a great one.
It's just brilliant.
That was so beautifully handled. That's outstanding.
11 years old. Ronan McKegney, not an actor anymore, but oh my lord.
He should be.
There's a video of him online from when Ireland beat Italy in the Euros, whatever that really, I think it was.
I remember
the Italy
that
game.
night. Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen the video where there's this guy from Belfast and then Ireland top at the game crying his eyes out going, "Oh my God, this is the best day of my fucking life." That's Ronan McKegney.
He's got the emotional depths and he's got the improvisational skills. He should be an actor.
And the other one that came into my head is my friend Shubs, who's been on the podcast, who's one of the best actors I've ever seen. He was in my year at Guildhall, but on the acting side. And just amazing. Like, anytime you see him, you're just like, "Fuck you."
Yeah. You know that's good acting. Fuck's sake.
That's my aim in comedy. I want comedians quitting at the back of the room. But Shubs was in. It was As You. No, it wasn't As You Like It. Hamlet at the Globe. And he had this moment where everyone clears off the stage, and he was playing Ophelia actually at the Globe, and he got some very interesting reviews, and I had to like message him and be like, "Hey, don't respond to Twitter trolls," because he was in a dress and he's like a hairy Indian guy.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of people being like, "Oh, this is completely ridiculous, getting blah, 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 to represent the rose in the blah, 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 blah." And he was like, and was like responding. And I was like, "Hey, Shubs, don't do that. Like, you don't fucking." But anyway, he like, there's this moment in the show where everyone else kind of cleared off the stage at the Globe Theatre. And he was kind of left on stage to gradually burst into laughter, which is like a difficult acting task you're presented with. So he kind of was like, and like laughed, and it was amazing. And there's this guy, the Globe audiences are so fucking funny, man. You get diehard Shakespeare fans and people who don't even fucking speak English in the same crowd. You're literally there to look at the architecture and leave, but they have to stay for a 3-hour long fucking production. He kind of does this gradually breaking into laughter, and a guy in the middle of the standing section, which is always where I go, just starts clapping. Just to be like, that was incredible acting. And Shubs just goes, "Thank you," and then keeps going.
Great. I love that.
Amazing. I've never been as proud of an actor in my life. I was like, stupendous. That's just stupendous.
So brilliant, because you can do that at the wrong time, and you can do that. But it's first of all, it's the Globe, so you kind of know you're in the. You kind of know there's that thing of like, if this was Shakespeare's day, they could do that. You know, they would. The audience would be responding, and they'd go like, "Don't fucking throw that at me," or whatever.
Yeah.
But like, so just the fact that he's on stage laughing alone, it's a performative thing. I love when it's done like that. If you're doing a big proscenium arch, Ibsen, maybe not the best time.
No.
But I feel like I love that. I love the Globe, love it, and I think that I've had some amazing watching plays there, because you do feel like there's the extra possibility that they'll turn to you and look at you in the eye and wink at you and go like, "I'm gonna do this next."
There's a
And
very go on.
No, that was it.
There's talking about Shubs and talking about the Globe. There's a very interesting thing with Shubs, and he won't mind me saying this. A lot of actors would mind me saying this. He is the worst person for corpsing I have ever met in my entire life. There is no one who will almost laugh on stage more than Shubham Saraf. It is spectacular. I've been to see him at the Globe, and he's just stood at the back in a dramatic fight scene going and I've spoken to him about this, and I've spoken to a few people about it. I think corpsing is a very interesting as a reset for people who maybe don't know what corpsing is. Corpsing is when an actor kind of laughs or breaks character on stage and kind of loses it, kind of comes out of the moment in quite hilarious fashion often. And there's something interesting about it, because there's a fear of it. People are very, very scared of corpsing, and it creates this strange culture where I think that fear of corpsing leads to safe acting sometimes, and people not being in the moment as much as they possibly could be. Because when you're in the moment and when you're pushing the boundaries of your performance and the honesty of your performance, the more invested in the lies and the nonsense that you're spinning on stage you are, the more ridiculous it is, and therefore potentially the more likely your brain is to realize the ridiculousness of it and corpse.
Yeah.
And I think part of what makes Shubs an incredible actor is the fact that he's so alive and in the moment, and he's so pushing himself to be in the moment.
Yeah.
That sometimes it spills over the other side.
Yeah.
And I think some actors, for fear of corpsing, will rein in their performance.
Absolutely.
To a level where it's damaging.
That he sounds an actor, like that's something I'd aspire to, definitely, is feeling like, is constantly striving for that thing where you feel like you feel like you could fall on your face or do the most embarrassing thing and becoming okay with that and going like, and actually, as you kind of said, we talked about a little bit before we started, kind of embracing that thing of sort of being, and acting should be inappropriate in so many ways. Like that was like rule one in drama school. It was like, appropriate emotion and appropriate acting is dreadful, because it's like, we're not like that in normal life, and we have inappropriate reactions to so many things. Of course, I think, and actually year 7, Chris talked about this in the episode I was listening to the other day I think it was from last week, and that difference between corpsing when it becomes you and your mates trying to kind of, maybe it becomes the difference between it being a private joke and the difference between, as you say, you're in such a heightened place and you're throwing it all out there, and it's such a bizarre situation that you can find yourself like laughing at just the ridiculousness of it. I have one more corpsing story. It was the weirdest night. It was there's a theatre in Dublin called the Gate Theatre, really hysteric theatre. Have you ever been in there?
I think I've been there. I think I went to see She Stoops to Conquer.
They definitely did that there, yeah.
That's the one.
It's amazing. It's changed director now, and they've had an amazing program for the last years. But they would have been known for doing real kind of real classical plays from the canon, like kind of your Oscar Wildes, and then a bit of like Ibsen, and then kind of like Irish kind of repertory plays, and there was a kind of a gala night there a few years ago or whatever, and they had people like people who performed there before, Sinead Cusack, Ray Fiennes, things like that. And there was one scene where it was Ray Fiennes and Jeremy Irons reading live from a Pinter script, and it's like and it just felt really appropriate because it was like Pinter is such that, like he's giving you just the most extreme outlandish kind of places to go for an actor. He's such a good writer for actors, I think. And it's the two of them reading this short play that is full of all this jargon about a machine. I don't know the name, but basically the machine keeps going wrong, and they keep talking about how this ridiculous machine has gone wrong. And the words and the sentences keep getting longer and longer. Like, what do you mean the calibrator of the XP pollinating vision, whatever thing? The two of them, like these older, really experienced actors who are just, we've seen incredible things, absolutely in stitches as soon as they looked at each other in the eye across the stage and just burst into tears laughing. And it was an amazing moment. Like, it was so fun.
It's so exciting. It's what makes live theater incredible. And I think I was literally thinking about this morning, and because I was thinking about, I watched Okja, the Bong Joon-ho movie, and there's something about his name that I can't not say it. Bong Joon-ho! I just think it sounds amazing. It's just the most incredible name ever. It sounds so
it's so grand.
Yeah. It sounds like an announcement. And so I was watching it, me and my brother in my house, and then my girlfriend who's in Carlisle. We will often like hit play at the same time on things.
Nice.
And my girlfriend, there's a point I want to bring up alongside this as well, which is the training of actors in drama schools to be emotionally open. So we were watching Okja, and we kind of paused. How I like texted being like, "Oh, can we pause? Like, we're grabbing some popcorn or whatever." And she was like, "Oh, I don't know if I can watch the rest of this movie tonight. I think I might have to wait till tomorrow because I've essentially just cried for the past 45 minutes, like really violently." And I was like, whoa, like, first of all, I very rarely cry at movies, like so rarely. And in general, I think I'm quite like not very, like, I don't cry very easily. And I'd found the film like upsetting and emotive and moving, but at no point where I was I close to tears. And often I'll say to people, "Oh yeah, like that made me cry." And what I mean is, I felt like I was gonna cry and then couldn't. So, and then I was thinking literally today, this morning, I was like, "Do you know what can make me cry, like almost without fail, is live theater." See, being in a room, and like my favorite play, I think ever, is Mercury Fur by Philip Ridley.
Oh yeah, brilliant.
And I have such an interesting connection with it because I initially, a few of us put it on as like a student production in second year, and the actors put it on and kind of self-directed and collaborated with the whole thing, and the techies built the set and did the whole thing. And then my friend Luke like wrote an underscore for the whole play, and we performed it. So I was kind of like behind the set. We were in a few rehearsals, kind of collaborating on it and working out what was happening. And then, so I had that experience of it, and I was like, "Oh, this play is really good. Like, this is really intense." But then I was so involved in it that all the kind of darkness in the play became kind of comical because it was so kind of everyday.
Yeah.
And then Izzy, my girlfriend, it was one of her third year shows, and I went to see it, and I was super excited because I was like, this is my favorite play, but in the bizarrest way, I've never seen it performed live. I've only ever been behind the set. Like, I've never actually seen the show. And I went to see it, and I cried for the last 20 minutes of the play and cried for 45 minutes after in the foyer. And then went to see it 2 or 3 more times and cried every single time after that. And there's something about that live theater, about being in the room with the people performing it, that allows me to rid myself of any of these walls that I've built up with, in terms of like crying.
Mm.
Because when I was younger, I was very, very quick to tears. I had a lot of problems with anxiety. I would cry a lot. And I think because of that, and because of like how potentially how men are told to be, I built up all these walls because, oh no, you're crying too much. So the reaction is to just never fucking cry.
Yeah, yeah.
And then to bring it back around to you and to like actors in drama school, is Shubs again said to me that there's an interesting phenomenon with actors, particularly during their time at drama school. They're being trained to be so emotionally available and emotionally vulnerable within their acting. Obviously it varies school to school and kind of technique to technique, but have you ever felt that kind of thing bleed over into real life, where you think this very raw state of being and this very, you train yourself to be able to emotionally connect to things that don't even exist, so
Yeah.
when something actually affects you, it potentially becomes overwhelming? Have you ever had any kind of experiences of that?
That's funny, man. I definitely have. I think you're like, you really articulated that brilliantly. They kind of, if I think of myself in first year drama school, I was very much like I was in school. I didn't feel like the idea of an emotional life wasn't really a thing. I was kind of like, there was circumstances that were difficult, and then there was just, and then there was, they just kind of happened and they were difficult, and then I got on with studying or doing whatever I was doing, or
Yeah.
acting and time. And I distinctly remember in first year drama school being a bit like that, being like, no, I'm here to act. I'm learning my acting, and like I'm fine. And these are the things I do at the weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And life was kind of organized and regimented on those lines. And like, wind the clock forward to kind of second and third year, it was the end of third year, just a radically different place, where I kind of did feel like most of my weeks were taken up with like just stories and art, in a way that like I did it because I loved learning about this emotional kind of interior life and experience. And I think there was probably a few parts in drama school that you have that moment going, I feel like I'm connecting to this character more than I have with others, that I'm playing a different person, but somewhere it's that paradox of like, I'm playing a different person, but I've never been more myself, or there's something has chimed within me here that I really feel, because that's the weird thing about emotions, I suppose, is you can't really, in a weird way, you can't really put a name to them. Like they're kind of just feelings that just movements in
I
your body.
remember
Like,
talking about this with someone. Like, I think a lot of pain and a lot of emotional uh, angst and emotional kind of turmoil with people comes from the fact that they feel obliged to verbalize what they're
yeah,
feeling and accurately identify it within themselves. And I think there's an interesting discussion to be had of where do emotions aren't words, emotions don't have dictionary definitions. Emotions are very raw, very human, very deep feelings that we have,
yeah,
and
yeah,
there's almost the compartmentalization of them doesn't allow you to feel them as truly as you potentially could. Like, if you didn't have any concept of language, would you, if there's a world where you're still having experiences that affect you emotionally, but there's no language,
mm,
would you be able to feel things more accurately and deeply than if you try and put it in a box and go, oh, this is sadness, when in reality it's much more complex than sad. It's a whole
yeah.
mix of things, and then what you end up doing is just going, it's a bit of this, it's a bit of this, it's a bit of this, a bit of this.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But there's something in just connecting to it and not trying to observe it, just feeling it and not trying to name it.
I think, oh, that's touched on so much, man. I mean, just briefly, like, I think I remember I had an amazing teacher when I was in youth theater called Regina, and she said this thing: emotions are like waterfalls. We don't experience them intermittently. Like they're like time. They're always moving. And I don't know whether it's our culture, whether it's a Western culture, we do compartmentalize them and try and connect them to experience and thought and stuff. But I suppose what drama school revolutionized for me was just, we had these movement classes all the time, and I thought movement was going to be teaching me how to walk like a king in Shakespeare or something, and it is a bit like that. But most of it's actually just experience, direct experience. Again, using words is not, they don't really fit what we're talking about here, but which sounds really wanky, I know, but they don't, like, you're just, it's a direct experience with your body, and the fact that your feelings are always present, and you do these classes over the years that sort of open you up to that idea that you're like, that you're always, that there's emotion, we have an emotional life that is constant, and that we can, like, and just learning about that but I suppose by direct experience, by like doing things, journaling about them, communicating, expressing it through movement. That was something that only chimed for me after I left, where I went, oh, like that's something I really experience in acting now, where I can feel like I don't just know a character, I can kind of feel my way into them, and I can and to go back to, actually, sorry, one thing I'd like to say on that as well, I've been thinking of this lately, because I recorded a conversation with a friend of mine for Mental Health Awareness Week, and we kind of touched on this a little bit, but I thought, funny, like when we talk about mental health, it feels like something somewhat separate to us, but mental health, I think, is like not everything. Obviously, there are very specific clinical things for some people, but so much of it is just emotional life, like, is just us and our emotions. And I sometimes feel like by calling a lot of that stuff mental health, we kind of treat it something separate. But like, as you said there, they're always kind of going on, and the things we can't really connect with words. Sorry though, to your point, I did have an experience of that a couple of times where I felt like totally unaware that it was happening. The experience of a character I was playing was bubbling up in my, I would say, my subconscious. Not that I really know what that is, but I think I do, and a little bit. And I remember it was probably filming Normal People last summer, that there was I had the summer of my life doing that. I loved it. But there was a moment towards the end of the summer, towards about August, which is probably as I was kind of finishing up filming this thing that, was so important to me. And I remember just having this unbelievable reaction to something, a small circumstance, a small external circumstance, but I just had this huge emotional reaction that lasted for kind of 2 days. And it was confusing. And as you say, you don't really have words for it. But sort of retracing it and kind of thinking about it after, I realized that it was probably a lot of the stuff I had been kind of investigating playing this character had been going on, boiling up in my kind of, those thoughts had been in my subconscious, and then those feelings had been kind of lying there somewhere. I felt like some kind of big explosion of that, which, made me think so much about just emotions themselves, about, what it means to play a character. And yeah, it was a really interesting one. I still haven't really, I don't know, unpacked it, but
there's a couple of things that brings into my brain. One, I remember, and I haven't thought about this in a while, I remember when I spoke about those kind of like performance art pieces that were like music or like rhythmic text that had an element of character within them, and that was kind of my first experience of really delving into a character. And this one piece that I did is called And She Flew, and it kind
yeah,
of it works through this person dealing with, so it's someone reliving like being in their house and looking out the window and then going up the stairs, and then through the piece you get to know that as they went up the stairs previously, at the top of those stairs, had an argument with their partner and pushed them down the stairs. So the kind of climactic point is like, and she flew, and it's like, oof. And that kind of unpacking, and I was very lucky to get to work with one of the the drama teachers at Guildhall, a woman called Dinah Stab, who's fantastic, who works with a lot of music students on kind of stage presence and performance craft within the
Okay.
world of music and building those kind of things into it. And I remember thinking that as I was learning this piece and working on it and trying to emotionally invest in it and trying to perform it as honestly and as truthfully as I could, I felt like I was very agitated in my day-to-day life. I was snapping at people. I was very quick to get annoyed about things. I felt like I was spiraling into the darkness of the piece that I was performing, and I hadn't been equipped with the tools to get back out again. So my part of my interest in drama school is, oh well, that's what those guys do. Like they are constantly going in as deep as possible to these characters, and they must be trained to deal with that and to remove themselves from that as well and do it in a safe way.
Yeah.
And speaking to
Yeah.
some people who went to drama school, they're like, that's absolutely not what drama school does. Like they teach you to go deep, but often they just like leave you to leave the room and let you kind of go to your own devices. And it's
Yeah.
not spoken about how to come out of a character safely. And the first time I heard about that was a teacher of mine called Adam Clifford, who is an interesting guy. He went to the Royal Academy of Music as well as a classical percussionist. He was a bit older than me. And then after a couple of years of being a really top freelance classical musician, he said he felt kind of itchy. So he went and studied kind of like physical theater in France, kind of like a lot of clowning and mime and movement based stuff. And he spoke about, he worked on this project where they did all the rehearsals in a forest. And it seems really silly, but I think it's really powerful to apply to other stuff. And I've applied it in learning kind of other darker pieces. Is that before they started the rehearsal, they went to the edge of the forest and said, can we please enter? And then they went in. And then when they left the forest, they were like, thank you for having us. We're done for today. And then left the forest. So it separates it out for
Gotcha.
you. And I
Yeah.
apply that in different ways, where one thing I came up with is like when I was rehearsing a particularly dark piece for my final recital, where I had to like hit myself quite hard, and it was like quite self-injurious and quite like violent towards myself emotionally and physically. I never, every time I rehearsed it, I would change clothes. I would never rehearse it in my normal clothes. I would always go into the rehearsal room and immediately change clothes. And I had a set of clothes that I
Yeah.
only used for rehearsing that. Then the other one that's like a bit sillier is when I'm working on, especially dark stuff, is I do, you know, like the Marauders map from Harry Potter.
Yeah. Yeah.
When you leave the rehearsal room, you just go mischief managed. And it's just like a silly little thing in my brain where I go, that's not real. That's a piece that you're working on to perform to other people. And you're now going back to your normal life as Vittorio.
I think those are brilliant because as you kind of said, they are things in your brain, but you realize through that's all it is anyway.
Mm-hmm.
It's all imagination. It just shows. I mean, if you want an example of how powerful our imaginations are, like we all know, how many times have we imagined a conversation that isn't happening, or imagined people's opinion of ourselves that isn't there, or so we have the power to be emotionally invested in things we've imagined because we're doing that most of the fucking time. But if you're doing that piece, which is like, especially if it's like, even by the act of physically doing what you're doing, you're stirring up. Like, I think that's another kind of thing we learned in those movement classes, is that like by doing the action of like punching and physical violence, you bring up some of the feelings that evokes and some of the anger, and that lives on in your body for time after, no matter what you do. But you can, I think, but by having those moments, whether it's little rituals like, what Bryan Cranston used to say, he used to put the hot towels in his face after doing Breaking Bad every day. I think, your friend, I see what they mean when they're talking about drama school. It probably doesn't give you those ways of coming out of it as much, but you can kind of find them yourselves, the little rituals, like you said. I guess sometimes where it gets tricky is probably moments where you feel unknowingly like you're allowing your own kind of experience, like you're kind of bringing your own experience into it, and kind of you kind of connect what you're doing or playing or performing with where you are in your life, as a way of kind of which can be a very, very helpful way to get into a character or a role. Like and I'm still thinking on that, but I think like there's a way you can do that that's probably safer. There's a way you can do that and then call it a day at the end of the day. But I think, yeah, that can sometimes be the tricky territory, is when you recognize something so much in yourself and you start to go, oh shit, like this feels very, very real. But yeah, I guess for me, like taking off, like things like taking off the costume, listening to music, and knowing that you have to decompress for 10 to 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Like if you have any kind of bit of turmoil or any kind of like emotionally turbulent experience, like you can't. I think sometimes we expect that we can just kind of do that and then go and eat our dinner or go and meet someone for a drink and then do that thing. It always lives on. So I think like something I'm trying to think on at the moment in this weird kind of quarantine is going, all right, if something like that's happened, take 15 minutes to actually just decompress. Like you can't expect your body to do everything. Go for a walk. You know what I mean? Do something that is going to like separate the time you were in that rehearsal room to the time after. And that ritual with the space in the forest is a really, I've heard of different practices like that. I think it's, and it goes back to, I suppose, the kind of idea of a rehearsal room as well. But being able to leave that and go, oh, actually all belongs in there is, I think, yeah, if they're just little mental tricks, but that's all they have to be, I think.
Yeah, it doesn't need to be. It doesn't need to be this kind of intellectualized
thing.
Yeah, it's
big
just like
thing.
a lot of it is kind of tricking yourself into these mindsets. And it is.
Because that's what the acting is in the first place, I think.
And yeah, and I think applying that in a broader sense to your life is interesting, where you like your life. I remember I was listening to Kevin Hart, who's an interesting character for sure.
Yeah.
I think just such an interesting and crazy mindset. And from what I heard in the most recent podcast, he was on Joe Rogan, and he had that big car accident and has kind of come out the other side with it kind of changed mindset of like, oh, maybe I was too focused on this or this or this, and I need to be whatever. But he said you have to have like a game mentality to your life, where it's like your brain isn't just your brain. It's like it's different tendencies within yourself and different kind of preconditioned things. It's like sometimes there's always that voice in your head that's going to be like, you could just sit about and not work on your lines, or you could not write, or you could not record that thing, and you could not make that thing, or you could get up and do it and keep moving, or you could doss about and just scroll through Twitter for 3 hours. And it's like viewing things, allowing, even though it's your whole life, it's your whole existence, and it's your whole being, it's colossal, it's massive, and it's important, taking it back to the real basics of it being a game and finding a playful nature to getting up in the morning and be like, nah, fuck that, let's go, like let's go get some stuff done. And like, I think it doesn't have to be serious. I think serious things, this is such a stupid sentence, serious things don't have to be serious.
That's not a stupid, I think that's that's a philosophy for life in some ways, isn't it?
Yeah, it's
taking it with a bit of humor and taking I haven't listened to that Kevin Hart episode, but like taking the loftiness out of it, the idea. I don't respond well to feeling like, and it's such a culture now, people going like, fucking, you know, there's great parties of result, but like get up at 5 a.m. and kind of like every morning and, you know, ice bath and then, you know, do, you know, and then you and then you get, do your day. And then like I like to enjoy my life.
But
But
I just want to live like Michael D. Higgins. I just want to walk around a nice garden with lovely dogs and be a very powerful speaker and artist.
yeah,
But
and improve people's lives with it, and
yeah,
be and read poetry at
but
you know,
with
in the
a
afternoon.
smile on your face more often than not. Do you know what I mean? I think a lot of what's going on at the minute, people are demanding everyone to be somber. And I agree that there are some horrible and very serious things happening.
Mm,
But the way I can be most inspired to make a positive change in my life and other people's lives is to have a smile on my face while I'm doing it.
absolutely, and it lightens the load of so many tasks, doesn't it? I've found that so helpful in the past few weeks when I think we've all come up against it more, where you're going, okay, I have to make a decision now with what I'm going to do with the day. And look, we're both freelance people, so that's especially true. You know what I mean? You got to, every day is up to you
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
make
Yeah.
something around. And I love that. So in a way, we're probably used to this before there was a lockdown. I I've battled with that, and then you go, actually, if I just enjoy it
Mm,
and make a decision to enjoy it, and realize that I'm not gonna be hurt at the end of it,
yeah.
like all it is a task, or all it is something, and there'll always be tomorrow, and you know, there's just so many ways that we can lighten the load and enjoy it more and take ourselves a bit less seriously. And I find I do better then, rather than thinking that I've actually got a mountain to move. I kind of go, yeah, like Kevin Hart says, treat it as a game, and realize that you're gonna be grand at the end
It's
of it.
gonna be
You know what I
okay.
mean? It's not gonna, yeah. And if you don't do it, it'll be fine. Just if you don't do it, then make sure that you're enjoying the the
You
kind
don't
of
want
leisure
to.
time or the thing.
There's such a
And
huge thing in particularly in music college, like practice guilt, especially the residential halls of a music college. There is no more stressful environment in the world because there's 170 people all in this kind of block of flats, and you can hear everyone practicing all the time. And it's not that every individual is constantly practicing. It's that everyone's practicing at different points in the day. So it adds up to 24 hours or with like all day practice that
yeah,
you can hear. But your brain
so
goes, I should be practicing at all times that other people are practicing. And I think we see that in other people in the world, like social media. You go, oh, fuck, they're getting that done. They're doing this. They're in this. They're doing whatever. And it breeds this sense of you don't view it as individuals doing two things a week each.
yeah,
View it as everyone is doing things all the time and I'm not doing anything. I'm only doing two
that's
things
so
a week,
true.
but they're all doing 100,000 things a week because that's
Yeah,
what I'm seeing.
I'm seeing the whole internet versus me,
Yeah.
and yeah, and the fact that in no one's day really do they have everything go right in some way. You know what I mean? That you're only seeing the bit that did go right, or whatever. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, in terms of, I'm aware we've been on for how long have we been on for? A good little while. It's been a good podcast so far. But
That's
we
been
will
great.
finish up shortly because I'm aware
Sure.
my podcast listeners are dickheads and will look at the length of the episode and go, nah.
Nah.
Um,
Yeah. Fair enough. Fair enough.
There's not. I would make it longer, and this is the thing. I do. I won't. I never. I won't cut it down. I won't like shorten it, and I will just ask the questions. And there's no fucking time limit on this, but I'm aware it's striking that balance of not many people will make it through a 4 hour podcast, and we can do another one another time and
Yeah. Yeah.
chop it up for people. Do you know what I mean? So I think we've covered a lot of really good ground. We'll talk about a couple more things, and then if we have more that we feel we need to talk about at another time, we'll do that. And then we're more likely that people will make it through two shorter podcasts than one very
Gotcha.
long podcast.
Yeah.
Um, in terms of that kind of freelance thing and like work ethic and getting stuff done like
Mm.
this must be like quite an exciting time for you as like a freelancer of going like, okay, I've been a part of this normal people, like you said, tremendous summer and going like, right, this has been a great success. You did
Yeah.
really good work in it. And like I told you when we first like ended up messaging each other, like really fucking class work in
Thank
the
you.
show.
Thanks, man.
And moving forward, like, what's your kind of mindset moving forward? That's a very strange question to ask in lockdown, and you're maybe like, there's very few people who've experienced what you're experiencing right now, which is the kind of the your career, like, kind of flourishing at a moment where you're not allowed to go outside.
Yeah,
You know
yeah,
what I mean?
yeah. It possibly is kind of rare, yeah. Like, but yeah, I've kind of made peace with some. I mean, like, I probably spend most of my time at the moment doing things that don't require much brain power, but you know, give me some sense of achievement. Like, so as I say, I've been doing stuff in the garden and kind of like do a bit of work out there, and then have one or two creative projects that I've been tipping away at. And it is the first time where I've gotten an extended period just to do that, and to go, oh, actually, like, I can't say I have no time now. I have plenty of time. So in a weird way, it's like I've always felt like the day has been filled by something. So it's been great. Like, I've really, like, obviously, no, it hasn't been great. Jesus, it's been really bad for a lot of people. But here it's there's two realities, isn't there? There's the people who are just affected by this lockdown, there's the people who are affected in a much more serious way by this. But thank God I haven't been, and I've been living in the kind of la la land of my, like, house, where I get to sort of, play guitar for as much as as long as I want, and go into the garden. But so I am mindful of that. But I've definitely benefited from the length of it, and the length of time to do the same things day in, day out. I've realized how beneficial some of those habits are. And yeah, and like nowhere near got done the things that I wanted to do, but like I'm on the way. And then career wise, which I almost think is a separate thing to that, is like I had jobs interrupted and postponed because of this, and they're all, like, thankfully there seems to be kind of dates starting to happen now where people are going, we actually might be back at the end of July or in August. I was filming a TV show in County Clare for RTE, and we stopped halfway through, so hopefully that'll finish in the summer. Hopefully I'll get to do another play, tour of a play at some point. But so I'm really lucky in that, things were postponed and lost, but I kind of have them to look forward to again. I know it's probably very tricky sometimes if you don't have those things.
It's almost, and this has just come into my head, like, it's almost like a reliving of that moment where in music college and drama school, the severe cliff when you leave, of having your days full of rehearsals and classes and shows and and showcases and all these things, and then when you graduate, you're just let out into the world and gone, okay, there's 24 hours in a day, go do what you want with it. And I think both at graduation and during lockdown, I've seen a lot of actors go, oh, well, I'll wait for everything to come back. And you kind of go, it might, something might fall in your lap, but what if it doesn't? And I think there is, particularly in actors, I think there's a lack of understanding of the control that you can have, and the things that you can create for yourself. It makes me so happy to see mates of mine like making little sketches or short films, and it's kind of, they frame it as like, oh sure, we had nothing better to do in quarantine. And I'm like, look, no offense, you weren't doing much before quarantine either. Like, your days weren't full.
Yeah.
Why were you,
Yeah.
this is a good short film. Why were you not making that before this happened? And it's great that it's giving you excuse and whatever. Like, what is your sense of ownership of your, because I think a lot of actors feel quite helpless to and at the behest of an industry that decides whether they win or lose, or they succeed or fail. Like, what's your approach to navigating that as an actor? And do you, like, are you making things that aren't acting related necessarily to kind of
Yeah.
fuel things in different ways?
I guess in terms of the control thing, you're in many ways you're not, and I don't think this industry is egalitarian and fair, and it certainly isn't. And there is an inequality of opportunity in so many ways, and I guess what's different in the industry the acting industry that we're in now is that there is more of a actor creator kind of role, and I think drama school probably taught me more to be like an artist than anything else, and the idea that like act way of doing that, but I can find other ways of doing that, and I think that's kind of essential to regain some kind of control, because as I say, like in terms of purely like getting roles and auditioning, like you can work as hard as you want, it's not always going to, I think that will eventually bring you somewhere, but it's not always going to be an instant kind of feedback, like, you know what I mean? And because it's not a perfectly fair industry, and it's an industry that is looking for certain things and not looking for other things sometimes. So for me, that's really important. First of all, because even if you're flying it, you're not going to be acting all the time. And there'll be plenty of time when you want some other outlet for what you're thinking. And I guess for me, that's been writing, both with an eye to like maybe creating a role for myself, or also just writing a story that I'm really interested in. So I've been doing a bit of that. And then I guess non-acting stuff that I kind of, like more for my own enjoyment. I kind of go, all right, I'm actually going to try and learn the guitar in a bit more detail than I have before. I'm going to try and understand what I'm playing a bit more than just kind of learning the chords of the tab or something. And so but I'd say those are more kind of hobbies, and they're more just because I like doing them. But I kind of think where I went to where I went to drama school in Dublin, in a place called the Lear, which is an amazing drama school. There was this conversation that because the Irish industry was kind of growing at a great rate, but was still, small compared to the amount of actors that were coming out every year and that were acting anyway, that you have an opportunity to increase the industry yourself by the work that you make. And that was kind of drilled into us a bit, and I haven't done loads of that in the last 2 years, but it's definitely part of my, like, I think about it every day, like, what can I kind of do or create that makes me happy and satisfied as an artist? Because even if you're lucky and are getting acting jobs, some of that won't satisfy you as an artist so much. So, but it keeps, it keeps you paid, it keeps you fed. Like, so, yeah, I think I think it wasn't always the case, but I think you kind of have to now in this industry.
Yeah.
I think so. I think for most of us anyway.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And it's satisfying to have ownership over stuff, to be, and it's
it
also,
can be a great thing.
Yeah, it's satisfying in a different way to forfeit that control and some element of creative control to a director or another writer or any number of things, and I just try and tap into it all at different levels. Do you know what I mean? Like when I'm acting, I get stuff that I don't get when I'm doing stand-up. When I do a podcast, I get
That's
stuff
it.
that I don't get when I'm acting, and all three
That's
kind of
it.
work
Yeah.
together to make something, to make me like satisfied as an artist living in the world, I guess.
Yeah. And I think what is hopefully great is, and like if there's anyone who's say starting off as an actor or training who's listening to this, I would say that's a really good thing for sometimes there's been, I don't know, there's a stigma or thing attached to it not being the thing you do all the time. But as I say, all of this stuff, your music training, the acting work, you've like the stand-up comedy, that is all feeding off the same thing in a way, which is just your instinct to create something. And like what I love about, there's many bad things about the way this industry is, but what I like about it is that we should be proud, I think, to be creating, like, people should be proud to create their own work and to be kind of creative in other ways than just, say, the field they trained. Because, like, I think that when I look at that, that speaks of a brilliant artist, rather than that stigma that people are going, well, if I don't, if I'm not always acting, then do people kind of think I'm not as much of an actor or something? Like, that's not been my experience as an actor, and I think I'm only the better for it in some ways. So, like, what I like about it is I think that stigma is kind of going, and it's like, even the way that actors and artists integrate with the world now, and kind of, it's like the fact that we can do this podcast and talk about quite personal experiences or things that might be vulnerable and stuff, that's kind of, that can be a really positive thing, whereas I think maybe people didn't have that opportunity before.
Yeah, people like to hold on to that mystique of actors and the kind of like the mystery of like, oh, who are they really? Like, you
I
don't
should probably do a little bit more of that, but
fuck them. That's for shit actors. Only shit actors don't tell you anything about themselves because they're not good enough to cover it all up.
That's a hot take. I like that.
Man, if you can only open up as a character, you must be scared of something.
Yeah.
We'll finish up there. I'll hit record and then I'll do a little outro. But that was great. Thanks so much for coming on, man.
I really enjoyed that. Thanks for having me.
So I'll hit stop recording. And that was episode 60 of the Good Guy Podcast with Eanna Hardwicke. If you've made it this far, hey, I reckon you owe me a wee 5-star review and a subscribe and a thumbs up on YouTube or whatever you fucking think about. Plug it all off the top. If you don't follow Eanna, follow him. If you don't follow me, follow me. That's the fucking be all and end all of it. You're all fantastic. Thank you for listening for the duration of the podcast and watching if you're on YouTube. I think this video might be a little bit jumpy. I've got a new camera and some new cables, and I don't know how my laptop's keeping up with it. I might need to get a new laptop. But I hope you enjoyed. I hope you're wonderful. You are wonderful. You're fantastic. And if you're new to the podcast, at the end of every episode, we say this. We say, up the fucking good, guys. Have a good week, folks. See you later.